Hey, Jay here, doing chapter 2 of The Need for Words. Chapter 2, The Breakdown of Words. In this chapter, we're examining Rodenberg is her thesis that I guess it assumes that there's been the attachment and familiarity with language has lessened over time, and trying to identify what is caused this lack of connection and a distrust of words. And kind of starts off with a kind of rhetorical question of have the need for words been educated out of us? And so she kind of takes a look through a variety of things. She takes a look through family, the importance of family environment in speaking, of telling stories, of speaking, of debate, of discussion. That she finds that her theory is that this has been greatly lessened through the use of a lot of technology and electronics, which is stunts and silence children. They go from kind of very interactive stuff with parents to, I guess, this is putting kids in front of TVs or on their computers, where they're just basically just the receptacle, and they're not speaking at home. And when that's you so you shift to the next thing, which is education. These kids are coming into schools already with a bit of a deficit for their spoken communication, and that in schools, she's been a teacher for a good while, and she's found that successive generations of students are having kind of less and less oral skills, versus like with her own education, where there was speech, chant, singing, and reading aloud were all common parts of education in her time. But with the growth of larger class sizes and stuff like that, that's just simply not possible. It's all about quiet reading stuff quietly to yourself. No reading out loud, definitely not chant and singing. That probably got cut first. um, how that speaking used to play a central part of education. Like, her, even with a speech impediment, she was getting lots and lots of training on speech, and had inspiring teachers who kind of conjured this interest to her. I do wonder exactly how wealthy she was. I mean, she's probably an older woman, but like, was she in a fairly upper class school? This doesn't maybe wasn't something that working class kids would get even back in her day. But she's really focused on the idea that you learn through speaking. That just simply reading something silently to yourself is not a way to learn stuff. She talks about, in this book being published in the 90s, she talks about kind of very much kind of like anti-speech, that in the 80s and 90s, voice classes for teachers were cut. So when you're actually training a teacher who spends a good hunk of their professional life standing in front of students and having to vocally perform, the teachers didn't get a proper education in speech, and thus are end up being a lot of them end up being poor role models for students. They don't know how to project. They don't know how to properly take care of their voices. They possibly don't know how to perform. It's the kind of droning speech throughout the whole class that is in this kind of the voice that no one wants to listen to, and indeed doesn't do any good. But that's what kids start to think of. Oh, you have someone in front of me in a school. It's that boring kind of that thing. Or teachers who are like working such long hours and not being able to, like, take care of their voices. So yeah, teachers are now have a tendency to be bad models for students. And so this is very much her doing. I mean, I'm not that interested in this stuff myself, but it's a call to put language and voice training back into teacher training. And I mean, she does make the point that there's actually been a bit of a switch, that some of this is like, it seemed like, okay, all of this is going away, it's all dying, but that she feels like there's a real push now for this putting language and voice training back into teacher training and back into the curriculum. Like professionals, the average person is now trying to make up for the neglect of his or her voice has suffered. Which, I mean, I guess I have to say from my personal experience, that would be true. I am making an effort to self-educate myself on how to be a better speaker, to be more connected with my words, I guess. Um, without skills on the curricula for all students, I'd risk another generation of silence and losing the ancient vocal wisdom and the roots of Western civilization. The argument being that a lot of this of older tradition is a vocal tradition, and that gets lost. I think she makes the point of somewhere that, like, plays, Shakespearean plays, you don't understand them by reading them silently to yourself. You understand them by them being acted by other people, or by speaking them yourself, that getting that feel of the language there. Um, Very much, written word versus a spoken word. She does use her hedge phrases. Research now supports that spoken knowledge is remembered long after written knowledge has been forgotten. It's those kind of vague now supports. That's like, who supports it? What studies is this? Is this kind of science that she's quoting, or is this actually, real stuff? It's anything. Her whenever she brings out scientific support for stuff, I'm always a little bit dubious, because she's seems to be very much guilty of cherry picking stuff that's going to support her argument, and isn't necessarily particularly well respected amongst the scientific community. And there's just the whole thing of like, well, of course, spoken knowledge could be remembered long after written knowledge, because I mean that's the whole point of writing something down, is so you don't have to remember it. It's written down. She does have a thing of, she very proudly says she doesn't allow note taking in her classes, which, that kind of sucks for people who have different kind of learning styles. I can go to a class and sit there and listen hard, but I'll find that most of that knowledge will actually poof out of my brain if I don't have notes to refer to later. So, she's going for very experiential, maybe it's very practical classes, but I would find notes, her proudly saying, like, I banish notes from my thing, is that, she's hardcore vocal side of the things. And while I'm interested in getting more into the vocal side of things, God's sakes, my creative production at the moment is all vocal. It seems it goes to the other side of things to say I'm not going to allow notes in my class. Speaking your way into writing and reading. Great speaking needs great writing. Once connected to words, our appetites for reading becomes voracious. So speaking needs writing, and also when you connect you connect to words vocally, then you'll actually want to read more, which I guess is good. I mean, I do think about this of like, there is the shift from reading out loud, has to silent reading, is something that I think they talk about. Like Thomas Aquinas was someone who would read everything out loud, but we've definitely shifted as a culture a long time ago to silently reading to ourselves, it being less of a public act and more of a private act, which I don't know if Rodenberg is particularly connected to. I mean, I doubt if she goes home and reads a novel to her out loud to herself every night. She probably would read to herself. Um, and the only way to understand sound enhances sense. Only understand a play when it's spoken. You could say that's certainly true for someone like Shakespeare and others. I mean, that's though that is you when you say a play is best understood spoken out loud. It's like, well, that's how it's written for the stage, versus a novel. Well, I think probably a best thing a writer can do is read something out loud to see if it flows. It's not necessarily, it's kind of begging the question. I don't know. Says like the decline of literacy is linked to the decline of speaking. It should be read. Education should be reading, writing, and speaking. as far as she's concerned, which, a vocal coach wants speaking to be part of the curriculum. I guess that makes sense. I know for myself that speaking, I think, would be an invaluable reinforcement of everything that happens in reading and writing. Um, it's interesting you talk about the decline of literacy, and it's like, well, what measures are you taking for the decline of literacy? There's some studies that would say that there's more people reading today than they ever have in the history of mankind. So is literacy declining? This is Rodenberg is very interested in creating of outlining what she sees as a problem because she has a solution for it. Um, I don't know if this is really a debate I need to get into or with her. I'm looking forward to the second half of this book. There's also a need for discussion and debate, opportunities for general and unthreatening debate, not just rich schools. It's Socratic method, teaching by question and answers, and not my addition is, yeah, not the monologues in a droning voice at the head of a classroom without where you're tuning out, you're not engaging. I like the thought, she has a thing of this engaging ideas without threat. Too many equate disagreement with anger. It's you're either attacking, the debate bros on YouTube, or you clam up and it's like, oh, we're not going to argue at all, or just overly agreeable to shut down that kind of communication. I'm probably in the overly agreeable category myself. That's one of the things I like about BookTube is there does seem to be a certain amount of just exchanging ideas without threat. Whether we change any minds or not like that, but we can allow each other to have different points of view and hear what people have to say to support their argument. So that is something that I do like. And I mean, this is the thing is she's very anti a lot of the tech and a lot of the social media, which is a rather blanket thing. And I mean, I guess you can say in a larger sense that like Twitter or something like that seems quite nasty from the outside. I don't actually participate in Twitter. There might be quite welcoming, beautiful little spaces in Twitter. I wouldn't know. I do know that there's those kind of spaces in YouTube where people seem to have can have that kind of debate. There's also lots of bullshit because there's also lots of bullshit in the world. I guess you can find it anywhere. She's talking about the training of young actors, which it's I've got like a lot of stuff here, but there's this whole thing of seem to have a distrust of words and extravagant passion. See things being small, more truthful than kind of large, extravagant displays of passion. Saying it's like it's the influence of TV and film, which makes sense because I mean when you're an actor on the stage, you have to project to the back. People in the back need to know what you're doing. Whereas in film and TV, I've heard it said it's almost like you hardly make any motion whatsoever, and it's just the tiniest little look conveys a whole bunch of stuff because it's a much more intimate medium. I mean, she may just be saying like there's a lot of young actors who only have the small stuff. They don't have the breadth, the wideness of the tools as anymore. Um, so, but if an actor or any professional speaker fully commits to words and fully releases them, they know their subject and text better. You have to throw the words into the air to see where they land and what you deeply understand. So fully commits to words and fully releases them. I'm interested to know what this means. This is a problem with having all this kind of argument, a little bit of this non-practical stuff here at the beginning where she's trying to convince you of her worldview. It's like, I'd like to see examples of this. And I guess I'm going to be getting them in part 2. I mean, she says at the end here, it's like, look, guarding against quick fixes. This is a craft, something that you will learn. You need time to grow, to train, to stretch your voice, also time and maturity to be sensitive to the language and gravity of words. So this is a lifelong application, which makes sense. You see actors as they mature and become more as they grow, and I can see that for just general speakers of all types. And not you need to take time, not a speed read where the words are all flattened out. I think at one point I was trying to pick up my pace on my videos, like, oh, my videos are too long, so I'm going to speak quicker, versus just maybe cut out sections and give myself time for the most important sections. So and I don't think that helped me. I think that just became a rush, a blizzard of words. Whereas slowing down, being thoughtful, having it's like savor and highlight words, pauses, slower, more measured. This is kind of the natural speaking, where the pauses and the silences give space for words to reverberate. So yeah, there's that. So she says at the end, because we want to end on a high note, is that when she wrote the next section 24 years ago, and it feels like it's almost redundant now, that she decries like speech is being eroded, voice training and debate, dialogue and discussion are all under attack. It's kind of a besieged kind of craft, and then that the city had fallen. But now the tide is turning, and we know we have to speak again. We're beginning to understand that embodiment of voice and language, its physical power, changes the makeup of the brain, which is we're back into fucking every moment where I think, oh, we're kind of getting somewhere, she goes back into pop sci again. At least I assume it's pop sci, because she doesn't actually give any actual factual basis. She's probably read something somewhere that she liked, and she's decided to include it in there. So we're beginning to understand seems to be a sort of way of saying people are speculating, but we don't have any hard data that actually supports what we're saying yet. But people are beginning to understand. Is the kind of bullshit that just frustrates me in books like this and wants me to just get on to the practical stuff. And this, but we have to, the tide is turning, and we know we have to speak again. Like, well, what are you talking about here? There's a tide. There's just all this kind of vagaries, which sounds great. This is the whole thing of like, she has great sounding words, but what do they mean? It's like having the sense behind the words, having the meat behind the words is what I'm looking for. I don't get it from sentences like that. With embodied practice and dedication, we can develop our speaking language connections. All is not lost. So that's the final thing from this section. It's like, if we can deliver on improvements, that's good. That's good. I'm not quite sure. She set up all these problems. I see a lot of demand for speech in our new world. I mean, I guess I agree with her in that. I don't know if that's ever gone away. I think there's a issue of democratic debate. There's a political side where, yeah, we need actual meaningful debate, and not just people screaming epithets at each other across aisles, across little bubbles that we have, to try and to actually communicate with each other. That is difficult. I think she says, "Oh, is education been It has have the love of words, has communication been educated out of us?" I don't think it's been educated out of us, but I do think there has been there's been, the focus hasn't been on communication. It's been on other parts of education, to the neglect of learning how to communicate. And I mean, to be fair, as Letterkenny would say, it is a neglected art. The thing that I hated the most in school was when I had to do a presentation, because I sucked at it. And a lot of and I think about it, it's like, we never had a class on how to give a presentation. We were just given a topic and said, make a presentation on this, and kind of given the general thesis, come up with the thesis, do your outline, do your conclusion. but we weren't really given any education on how to do that, how to do a presentation. So we all floundered around and did not enjoy it. Um, I think about my experience with learning how to write an essay, which only came when I took an English class. Finally, I'd taken a bunch of 100 level English classes and not done well, but it was a class where it was how to write an essay, and it was a kind of a teaching on that. And once I got that down, then I could actually write essays because someone actually had a class and taught that. Um, and that worked. And I think that if you had stuff in school where you were taught how to do a presentation before you were then expected to do presentations, that would be, unsurprisingly, would make things a lot better for people. So I guess I agree with her on that, even if I find some of her sweeping pronouncements kind of annoying here. All right, so that is chapter 2, the breakdown of words, which, you know, I get annoyed with her, with Patsy Rodenberg, but I do also see, I can see her point, in a general sense of education has gone to a very kind of streamlined way of making, of, of, has gone to a very, and I mean has for a long time gone to a thing where people don't God damn it, I'm trying to get to the what section I'm going to do next. There we are. Culture. Okay. Yeah, I agree with her on stuff, but I also get annoyed with her sweeping pronouncements and her science is suggesting or research may show or all this stuff is really annoying. I want her to get away from trying. She's not a scientist. I want her to get away from that and and get in, because she's just going to pick whatever stuff pleases her and ignore the rest. I would like her to just do the practicalities of speech, of practical stuff. And apparently I'm going to have to maybe suffer through one more chapter, cultural and physical barriers, to speech. When we speak words in whatever context we use them, we instantly come up against all kind of barriers, cultural, mental, and physical. There are even technical barriers learned from school attached to certain words. Words like poetry, for example, immediately throw up barriers. So we'll get into that next time. And then I know once I've battled through that chapter, we will actually get into more practical exercises, which is sort of what I've been looking for from Rodenberg and haven't gotten yet. But it's coming, and hopefully it'll be worth it. Hopefully it'll be worth it. At least I'll know where she's coming from. Ah, the vocal theater people and their poor embattled lives. Well, it is. It's not. It's not. There's for all the top flight actors who she's taught. There is all the penniless theater actors who don't get anything, and the arts aren't appreciated enough. I mean, I'm not interested in this to become an actor. I'm interested in this to become a better speaker, to be able to drone a little less and to emote a little bit better, but in a genuine way, and not in a way that is fake either. Connected, with integrity. I guess all those words embodied, all those words do mean something. I think they do mean something to Rodenberg. I give her credit for that. I think it does mean something to her, and I'm hoping I can grasp some of that meaning, and more importantly, grasp the practice and work on that. All right, I will leave things there. I have been Jay. More videos later.